The galaxy was at peace. For over a century, the stellar accord had held firm, an interstellar pact between the 86 dominant species, each sworn to uphold balance, trade, and non-aggression. The days of warships and superweapons were relics, studied only by historians and first-cycle students. Worlds prospered. The accord thrived, and beneath it all, Earth was forgotten. Humanity, once a wild card in the early starfaring age, had vanished from political spheres nearly 70 cycles ago. Rumors of internal collapse, infighting, or self-exile floated through diplomatic channels, but no concrete intel ever emerged. No embassies, no comm signals, no trace, until the drift beacon screamed. Located in the remote sector of Arias Deep, the beacon was ancient, pre-accord tech, rarely triggered, barely maintained. Yet on cycle 142.4.3, it roared back to life with a singular warning: unknown entity inbound, probability of extinction high. Aboard the Helix Concordant, an observatory vessel on the fringe of the Accord's monitoring array, Watchmaster Clepharos's 6 ocular stalks trembled. The data feed was corrupted, laced with electromagnetic anomalies, distorted energy profiles, and something he hadn't seen in over a century: human biosignatures. Not one, not many, just one. Singular, isolated, blazing hotter than any profile in recorded memory. "Is this a prank transmission?" asked sub-analyst Tovra, her mandibles twitching nervously. Clepharos didn't answer. He couldn't. The signal's trajectory was clear. An asteroid belt once known to harbor a Terran outpost, long since believed abandoned, now showed violent fluctuations in gravitational integrity. Something massive was moving through it without regard for inertia, mass, or conventional physics. The last record of Earth's military was a ghost file. Project Riftborn. Black class, beyond top secret, initiated just before Earth's radio silence. Every galactic spy master had tried to breach its encryption. All had failed. Now Clepharos wondered if that project had finally awoken. A decision was made. The Accord dispatched a scout fleet. Standard protocol: 15 ships, moderate shielding, equipped for diplomatic or combative first contact. Routine. Procedural. They arrived 2 cycles later. Contact was lost after 9 seconds. 9. Not enough. Time for a battle. Not enough time for diplomacy, but enough time for a scream. The final broadcast, barely decrypted, was a garbled whisper on loop. "It sees us. Gods, it sees everything." Then silence. Across the stellar accord, panic spread not like wildfire, but like rot. Quiet, infectious, unavoidable. No known force had done this. No civilization, no empire, no fallen gods of ancient war. Just one entity, a Terran designation auto-flagged from the remaining telemetry logs. Codename: Havren. Translation: Unbound. In a war chamber carved into the moon of Chalzeth, High Strategist Malari of the Osiri Mindweave convened a meeting with the Accord's inner council. "We do not know what this Havren is," she declared, "but it is not a fleet, not a weapon. It is a being, and it came from Earth." One of the envoys, a crystalline lifeform from Vaek's spiral, buzzed in alarm. "A human?" "No. Worse," Malari whispered. "A human creation." And then, without warning, Havren moved again. Its path shifted toward inhabited systems. Not with a drive signature, not with portals. It bent space, walked through void, and ignored distance like it was a suggestion. A lone dreadnought was sent to intercept. It didn't return. But the debris did. Melted, twisted, but untouched by energy or heat. Just broken by something the laws of physics weren't ready to explain. The galaxy slept peacefully. Until Earth's monster awoke. The wreckage of the dreadnought Carassus Vale arrived in orbit around Trinaxis Prime 3 days after its last transmission. No jump signature, no courier. It simply appeared, as though time itself had delivered the shattered husk like a tombstone. There were no survivors, no logs, just a final word etched into the inner hull by an emergency fusion. Cutter, still glowing faintly from heat, it remembers. That single phrase threw the Accord into chaos. On the diplomatic channels, finger-pointing began. Accusations flew. Earth had breached the Accord, Earth had built a god, Earth had returned, but Earth itself remained silent. No transmission, no signal, not even a whisper on the subquantum bands. The homeworld was still wrapped in the strange veil that had blanketed it since its disappearance. Opaque, impenetrable, and wrong. So the council turned to the archivists. High Curator Facine, a being composed of liquid crystalline intellect, poured through sealed data files, calling upon memories forbidden even to the founders of the Accord. Deep within the annals of Terran history, he found Project Riftborn. And within Riftborn, a single line that chilled the chamber to absolute stillness. We do not build weapons to destroy our enemies. We build answers they can never question. So, Riftborn wasn't a battleship, it wasn't a war machine, it was an entity, designed not to fight but to win, to erase, to end questions. Havron was humanity's last whisper to a galaxy they no longer trusted, and it was awake. It struck next at Dromid Station, an orbital spire above a gas giant mined for graviton fuel. Not a military target, not a command node, just a logistics hub with thousands of civilian species. No warning, no threat. Cameras captured only brief flashes. Shadow tearing through titanium. Time skipping like a damaged recording. Lights flickering, then vanishing, consumed. When investigators arrived, there were no bodies, not a single drop of blood. No carbon residue, no corpses, only a message carved into the control tower's command wall. This is not your war. Atop. The floating spires of New Alvi, Supreme Arbiter Calvinar convened the first pact of silence in over a millennium. No observers, no translators, no AI recorders. Only 10 minds, chosen for clarity and lack of fear. Earth did not abandon us, Calvinar said. His translucent eyes shifted to pure black. They withdrew because they feared what they were becoming. A trill of nervous vibration spread through the council. You're suggesting that Havron was not a weapon of vengeance? No, Calvinar replied. It was a weapon of containment, built not to conquer, built to watch, built to ensure that no one, not us, not Earth, would ever break the Accord's peace. But it's broken it now, one screamed. Calvinar's voice dropped. Because someone else already did. And with those words, he activated the final decrypted packet from the ruined Kirasis Vale's black box. The council watched in horror as a brief image appeared. A fleet. Massive. Unmarked. Not of Accord origin. Lining up on the edge of Terran space. An invasion. Not by humans, but by the Varosk. An outlawed, extinct species purged by the Accord long, hours or so they thought. Havron had not started this war. It had woken up because the war had already begun, and Earth's monster remembered the first betrayal. The galaxy had always known the Varosk as legends, whispered horrors of a species so violent, so deadly, that they were cast out from the Accord before its formation. Their warships were vast, built from materials no other race could replicate. Their technology defied laws of physics, bending space-time as easily as breathing. It was said that the Varosk had been eliminated, eradicated in an extinction event initiated by the first alliance of galactic species. Their final, desperate stand had fractured the Accord's precursor civilizations. No one, not even the highest-ranking spy masters, had ever expected them to return. Yet there they were. The transmission from the Kirasis Vale showed them. Dark, impossibly large ships flanking the edge of Earth's forgotten borders. The ships were not moving through the stars. They were moving through nothing. Through empty space, bending reality itself, as if the laws that held the galaxy together no longer applied to them. The Varosk had come, and they weren't alone. Supreme Arbiter Calvinar stood at the helm of the Accord's Emergency War Council, his mind racing with a fury he had not known in ages. The warships that surrounded them were unlike anything seen in 1,000 cycles. Silent, unyielding. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. The Varusk have been hiding in the deep folds of space, Calvinar began, his voice reverberating in the command room. For centuries, they have bided their time, waiting for their moment. Waiting for Earth to fall, one of the council members, Chancellor Irva, hissed from her seat. Her crystal frame shimmered with barely contained anger. They know. We've been weakened. The Accord has spent centuries ensuring peace only to allow this, an extinction-level threat to re-emerge. They're not coming for us. Calvinar's voice was cold, cutting through the tension. They're coming for Earth. The room fell silent. The galaxy had forgotten humanity, had discarded it, assuming Earth's quiet retreat was some form of self-inflicted punishment. But now they realized the truth. Earth's absence wasn't abandonment, it was a preparation, a waiting game, a gamble for survival, and the monster that had been born of humanity's final gamble was called Havren. Havren had no origin, no creator, no master. It had existed for only one purpose, to ensure that humanity's enemies never returned. It wasn't a weapon. It was an extinction event contained within a living being. No one knew how long it had been alive, or how it had been created, but it had been slumbering, waiting beneath the crust of Earth. An energy of unfathomable complexity. A force that bent every rule of physics. The first signs of Havren's return had been subtle, unexplained bursts of energy, sudden gravitational anomalies near Earth's old boundaries. But no one had seen it. Not until it chose to reveal itself, and now the Varusk fleet was here to unleash their vengeance. They knew what Havren was capable of. They feared it, and they knew that to destroy the galaxy they would need to break it, destroy Earth's protector first. High Curator Fessen's voice trembled as he interfaced with the central databanks. The Varusk cannot defeat it, not with their weapons. They are not capable of comprehending the force Havren is. But they'll try, Calvinar said, clenching his fists, and we will be caught in the middle. The choice was simple: risk everything to defeat the Varusk or join them in a futile war that could tear the galaxy apart. And then there was Earth, where Havren was waiting, ready to make its move, as always, silently, with a purpose that was too vast for anyone to grasp. As Havren's wake reached the galactic borders, every signal began to distort. The Varusk. Fleets had begun their attack, but their movements were erratic, controlled by something no one understood. Not a command, not even a strategy. A warning, not a threat from the Varusk. A message. We do not destroy what we are bound to protect. The message was clear. Havren was not here to fight. It was here to end this fight before it even started. Its purpose had always been this: to watch over Earth, to ensure that no one, especially the Varusk, could disrupt the galactic peace. And now, it had become the galaxy's final guardian. The Varusk didn't know it yet, but they were about to learn the true meaning of fear. The destruction came swiftly. Across the entire Varusk fleet, a series of synchronized events unfolded, a series of impossible events. Weapons malfunctioned, shields turned to mist, hulls bent and folded as if made of paper, as if the very fabric of space itself rejected their existence. No explosion, no shockwave, no fire. Just disintegration. Inside the central command ship of the Varusk fleet, Warlord Talran struggled to understand what was happening. His species had conquered planets, obliterated civilizations, and defied the laws of nature for eons. But this was unlike anything they had ever faced. "Report," he commanded, his voice growing hoarse. "Warlord," one of his officers cried, scanning the chaos outside. "Our weapons, they don't work. The ships, they're collapsing." Talran slammed his fist against the command table. "Get us out of here, now!" But there was nowhere to go. Space itself bent and twisted. A vast, incomprehensible force had gripped the Varusk. Their once mighty fleet now writhed in agony, unable to escape the gravitational prison Havren had placed upon them. And then, in the silence that followed, came the final message. a transmission from Earth's deadliest guardian. A voice ancient and resonant echoing across the stars. You were warned. This is the end of your path. The Varask were no more. In the heart of the Accord, the Council watched in stunned disbelief. The live feed from the remnants of the Varask fleet had just ended, replaced by the symbol of Havren. A swirling mass of light, a storm of cosmic energy that bent reality itself. What just happened? Chancellor Irva asked, her voice trembling. Did we just witness the end of the Varask? Calvinar nodded solemnly. Not just the end, the beginning of the end. The Varask thought they could break the peace. They thought they could return as if they were still masters of this galaxy. He paused, his gaze darkening. But they didn't understand what they were up against. They didn't understand Havren. Faison, the High Curator, interfaced with the central data terminal, his crystalline form glowing with an unspoken horror. Havren didn't just destroy them. It rewrote reality around them. The Varask didn't just lose their fleet. They lost their place in existence. Calvinar's voice was a whisper. Havren was never just a weapon. It was the last defense. Earth's true purpose. And now that it's awake, it's not going back to sleep. Elsewhere, on the outer rim of Earth's forgotten borders, a fleet of Accord warships was poised for what seemed like a final stand. Their mission was clear. Investigate the distortion in space-time, learn what had caused the Varask's swift destruction, and above all, contain Havren, if possible. Captain Rilke of the Teldari Starflame led the small fleet, his gaze unwavering. As he stared into the space ahead, he had no illusions. The odds were stacked against him, but he had a duty. We don't know what we're dealing with, Rilke muttered to his crew, but we're going in, and we'll make contact. Keep your wits about you. As the fleet drew closer to the anomaly that now marked Earth's once hidden borders, something new began to emerge from the depths of space. A ripple, faint at first, then growing ever more powerful, a twisting of reality that seemed to have no beginning or end. Report! Rilke barked as his sensors began to ping wildly. What is that thing? The anomaly was alive, an entity made of pure shifting energy. As the fleet ventured deeper into its core, something more horrifying became apparent. The ships were being pulled apart. Not physically, but mentally. Their minds were shifting, their perceptions warping, as though the very essence of their beings was being undone. Rilke felt it first. The sensation of being forgotten, of existing without purpose, as though the universe itself had no place for him. His thoughts began to blur, the line between reality and madness beginning to dissolve. We're losing ourselves, an officer muttered, clutching his head. Captain, we need to retreat. But it was too late. The fleet was absorbed, not by force, not by any weapon. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been a part of the galaxy at all. In their place, there was nothing, except Havren, and it was watching, waiting, silent. Back on the Accord, the silence stretched long, filled only by the hum of the central command console. Calvinar stood facing the data projections of the vanishing fleet. The message was clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. What will Earth do now? Faison asked, his voice softer than it had ever been. What will Havren do? Calvinar's expression was grim. It's not what Havren will do. It's what we will do. The galaxy had slept peacefully for too long. The silence had been shattered. And now, the true war had begun. The galaxy had been plunged into a new age, and the stars no longer felt the same. The people of the Accord had grown accustomed to their peace, to the belief that nothing would ever challenge the balance they had fought so hard to establish. But with the disappearance of the Varask and the arrival of Earth's monster, everything was in flux. The galaxy's core was still recovering from the devastating losses suffered in the wake of the Varask's sudden obliteration. What had once been considered invincible had been undone by an ancient force, one that had remained dormant for millennia, only to awaken when it sensed the return of an old enemy. And now, that force, that thing, was watching, calculating. Havrin had become a specter of fear, a living weapon whose true purpose was beyond the comprehension of those who sought to destroy it. But no one knew what it would do next. The Accord had begun to fracture. In the council chambers, Calvinar convened, the remaining leaders of the Accord, each of them gripped by the same uncertainty that had plagued the galaxy for the past week. One thing was clear. Havrin had made its presence felt, and now there was no going back. Chancellor Irva, her normally unflappable demeanor shaken, was the first to speak. We can't allow Havrin to control us. Earth has proven it can dominate, on a whim. But what happens when that power turns on the galaxy? Calvinar met her gaze, his tone unwavering. The Accord isn't dead, but we need to understand Earth's intentions, Havrin's intentions. If Earth seeks to maintain peace, we cannot risk driving them to war. But can we trust them? Faison's voice crackled with uncertainty. The Riftborn project was kept secret from the galaxy for centuries. What if Havrin is not the protector we thought it was? What if it is a weapon of vengeance ready to erase us all? There is only one way to know for certain, Calvinar said, his voice grave. We must make contact with Earth, with Havrin itself. The room fell silent. Back on Earth, deep beneath its buried cities, something stirred. Havrin was a force of nature. It existed not as a machine, not as a weapon, but as an entity, an intelligence born of something older than the galaxy itself. Its consciousness rippled through the core of Earth, weaving between the cracks of space and time, feeling every pulse of the galaxy, every tremor of conflict. It had been waiting, watching, for its time to come. And now it was awake. It was a guardian, but not in the traditional sense. Havrin was not a protector of peace but of survival, and it had learned, over countless eons, that survival was not guaranteed, not even for the strongest civilizations. The Accord, for all its unity, had one fatal flaw: fragility. And if it was to continue, if the galaxy was to be spared the ravages of its own making, Havrin would have to act. The message Earth had sent out was not a threat, but a warning. It wasn't Havrin's desire to destroy. It was its imperative, to preserve. But the galaxy was slow to understand that. In the depths of the Teldari fleet, Captain Rilke had been one of the few to survive the assault of Havrin's energy storm. But as his mind cleared from the disorienting experience, he began to realize something even more terrifying than the destruction itself. There was no destruction. Havrin had simply removed them from existence, as though they had never been a part of this galaxy. No rubble, no remnants, no evidence that they had ever existed at all. The fleet was lost, not as a fleet of warships, but as concepts, as if their very essence had been rewritten. Rilke's mind was racing. The Accord had failed to protect the galaxy from the Varosk. Now, Earth's protector was sending the same message. No more failure. Earth was not just a homeworld. It was a harbinger. And Havrin was not just a guardian. It was the galaxy's reckoning. The Accord had no choice but to act. Negotiations began in secret, each ambassador fearful of the consequences should they make contact with Earth. Havrin was too powerful to ignore, too elusive to understand. But its influence had already begun to permeate every corner of the galaxy, and then, as if on cue, the first ships from the Accord entered Earth's sphere of influence. They did not approach with force, but with caution. A tentative gesture of peace, one final attempt to communicate. What they found waiting for them was not a war machine, not a weapon of mass destruction, but something far worse. A voice, ancient and timeless, whispered through the cosmos. You have forgotten, but I will never forget. The fleet's communication systems shorted out. Their ships froze in space, caught in a gravitational web, unable to move. Slowly they began to pull apart. Nothing like the Varosk's destruction, No explosions, no burning, just absence. The ships and their crew dissolved into the fabric of space itself, as though their purpose had been erased from reality. The message was clear. The galaxy could never be the same again. Havren was not just a force. It was the ultimate reminder that some things could never be undone. Back in the council chambers, Calvinar stood before the gathering, his expression grim. Earth has made its choice. Havren has made its choice. And the galaxy has made its choice. The galaxy was changing, and there was no turning back. The ancient protector of Earth had awoken, and it was rewriting the stars. The time for peace was over. The time for survival had begun. The galaxy had entered a new age, but it was not one born of peace. It was a time of reckoning, of survival, and of terrifying change. The stars themselves seemed dimmer now, their light overshadowed by the ancient power that had emerged from Earth's depths. Havren, the monstrous protector, had awakened, and with it, an era of chaos. But even as the galaxy trembled, a question lingered in the minds of those who still believed in hope. What would Earth do now? For the first time in centuries, the accord was fractured. No alliance could stand against the weight of Havren's power. No fleet could approach the planet without being undone, erased from existence. The galaxy's leaders were divided. Some believed Havren was a necessary force, a final guardian meant to prevent the galaxy from falling into chaos once again. Others feared it, seeing the protector as a new tyrant, one who would impose its will on every living being across the stars. But one thing was undeniable. The galaxy was at the mercy of Earth's will. Calvinar stood at the helm of the council, his hands clasped behind his back, gazing out at the projection of the galactic map. It was a map that had once represented peace, order, and unity. Now it felt like a fractured relic, an illusion of safety. "The accord is collapsing," Calvinar said softly, his voice resonating in the empty room. "We cannot stop Havren. We cannot even touch Earth. And the longer we wait, the more power it gains." Faison, the High Curator, stared into the swirling hologram of the galaxy, a mixture of fear and determination on his face. "It's not just Havren that we have to worry about. Earth, in its isolation, is becoming a force in its own right. The Riftborn project was supposed to remain hidden, yet we have seen its true potential. It doesn't just protect Earth, it controls everything around it." "Not everything," Calvinar corrected. "There are still those who will fight, those who will not let Havren dictate the future." Irva, the Chancellor, spoke with an edge of resolve. "And there are still those who will bend their knee accepting Earth's guardianship in exchange for peace. The question is, can we survive if we don't?" Calvinar nodded. "There's only one path left. We must meet Havren on its terms. We must convince Earth that the galaxy is worth preserving. But we must do it now, before Earth's hand is forced by the very chaos we're trying to avoid." Far from the political struggle of the Accord, the universe's most powerful factions were preparing for one final confrontation. They had no choice. They had seen what Havren could do to an entire fleet, to an entire race. And the galaxy's darkest factions, once willing to cede power for survival, had now united for a common purpose: to stop Earth's protector, even if it meant destroying the galaxy to do so. Captain Rilke, the lone survivor of the Teldari fleet, had spent his days in exile, nursing the wounds of his shattered crew and questioning his existence. He had been a part of something that no longer made sense, a part of a galaxy that had in its own way ceased to exist. But now, he had a chance to make a difference. "There's a way," Rilke said, staring at a star chart filled with encrypted coordinates. "A way to reach Earth, a way to speak to Havren." His crew, weary from the brutal silence of space, gathered around him. They had all lost their homes, their purpose, their families. But one thing had kept them going: the hope that there was a way to stop Havren from rewriting the stars. "It's a fool's chance," one of his officers muttered. "Havren doesn't listen." "But it does," Rilke replied, his voice filled with a renewed certainty. "Because we are the last to ask." As Rilke and his crew launched into the void, another force was stirring, one far more dangerous than anything the galaxy had faced before. Havren, though silent, was aware. Its mind stretched across the galaxy, sensing every movement, every ripple in time. It understood the threat now, not the Varosk, not the factions, but the very idea of defiance. Havren was the guardian, yes, but it was also something more, a being that had existed before the galaxy was born, before the concept of time even began. Its awakening was not a choice. It was a necessity. It had been created for this purpose, to maintain balance, to enforce the survival of life across the stars. But even its power could not stop the inevitability of change. It had watched the galaxy for millennia, and it knew change was coming, no matter how many forces it bent or destroyed. The final confrontation was drawing near. The fleet arrived, a small coalition of those who still believed they could fight back, still believed that the stars could be saved. They did not come with weapons. They came with a message. "Earth," Rilke said into the void, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the galaxy's last hope. "We come to speak, not to fight. We come to understand. We ask only this: allow the galaxy to live." For a long moment there was no response. The silence hung heavy. Then from the depths of space, from the heart of Earth's protector, came the answer. "The galaxy will live. It is you who must choose whether to remain a part of it." And just like that, the stars began to realign.